So the second model we're going to look at is Deirdof's intercultural competence model. So there's actually a video by Deborah Deardoff is in Loop for you. It's in the additional resources where she talks about her model and about her work with it, and it's an interesting watch. So you can see the first difference we have between this and the developmental model I talked about in the last video is it's cyclical. It's not we start here, we go to here. Whereas in the last one, there was an end point, and you may go back and forth a bit, but there is an end point. With Deborah Deardoff, it's constantly learning and developing and creating more of an understanding. So let's look at each of these in turn. So we're starting off, and sorry, I'm just going to pop back a second because I wanted to show you here. So you can see at the top here, it says individual, and then it goes round and down to here where it says interaction at the bottom. So, excellent. Okay, so the first one is attitudes. So there's three key attitudes, which are respect, openness, and curiosity. So respect is valuing different cultures and perspectives, and it's demonstrating that you have a value, you value other people who are from different backgrounds. Being open, willing to engage with cultural differences, means you're willing to move outside of your comfort zone and to see other people's point of view. And then curiosity, which is actively seeking to learn about other cultures. And those three are foundational for the development of knowledge and developing those skills needed for intercultural competence. So even though there is a few sections in Deirdof's model, she believes that you need to have these three attitudes as a basis before you can start developing the knowledge and the skills that you will need to be able to develop more competencies. So the next section there is knowledge. So to be able to develop intercultural competencies, you must have cultural self-awareness, a deep cultural knowledge, and socio-linguistic awareness. That was a tough one to say. So deep cultural knowledge is an understanding of other worldviews. Sociolinguistic awareness, it's understanding how language is used differently and communication can vary across cultures. And of course, when we talk about language, we're not only talking about language in terms of speech, we can talk about things like body language and how we communicate, non-verbally. So those are all important things to think about because we all know that different cultures, body language can mean different things. And even things like, for example, if you are in some countries and you meet someone and you might offer to shake hands, and some countries don't shake hands. That's not how they meet someone and kind of be polite and respectful. So having that awareness and that cultural knowledge is really, really important. And when you understand the world from other people's points of view, that's a very important basis to start developing your competency. So next is skills. So of course you have to have skills to develop, to keep developing your intercultural competencies. And you will need practical skills. So she has a few. She has observing, listening, evaluating, analysing, interpreting, and relating. So the first three are processing of knowledge. And then there's the others are where they're very cognitive, are very thoughtful. And then you're relating it to things you might know or to other people. So you can't just rely on what you know. You have to be able to listen actively, to observe what's happening around you and to evaluate. So to pay attention to nuances and to interpret them accurately. And when you have that knowledge that I was saying in the previous slide, that knowledge of cultural understanding of different cultures, you will be able to then use your observations and interpret them correctly to process the information. So then we move on to internal outcomes. So there's two types of outcomes. There's internal, which is this one, and then there's external. So the internal is when you create a shift in personal perspectives. And I know I'm using you a lot. I just mean when a person. It's just a habit to say you. I'm sorry. Okay, so internal outcomes. So when you combine this kind of change in attitudes and knowledge and skills, it helps to then you start developing like a flexibility, become more adaptable, but also you're developing an empathy because the person starts to understand a lot more about what happens in different countries and different cultures, different cultures. And obviously, I meant to say this earlier, different cultures doesn't just mean in different countries. I know that's an example I used previously, but culture can mean a lot of different things. So that's an important thing to maybe pick up on when you are writing your assignment too. So once you have developed those internal outcomes, you'll start creating a shift in your own perspective, and you'll be able to see other people's perspectives and be able to respond, and you'll be able to understand how people would like to be treated and why, and respond to that accordingly. And that leads you to the final one, which is external outcomes. So external outcomes is when you have developed that effective behavior and learned to communicate. And it's shown by respectful interaction across cultures, but resolving misunderstandings, because people always have misunderstandings. You can have misunderstandings with your own siblings who you've grown up with, you know everything about, but people have misunderstandings, and it's important to be able to resolve those misunderstandings. And you will have those tools, or a person will have those tools, because they have that knowledge, those skills, that respect, and the ability to produce the appropriate behavior. So, another example for you to have a look at, if you would like to, of linking the actions to the stages in an educational context. So there's a few different actions there, and again, there is the stages there. So if you would like to pause this for a few minutes, and you can try and link them together, and then when you're done, you can move on to the next slide, where I'll go through them. Okay, so hopefully you did them, and if you did, well done. So looking at them there, so knowledge, the teacher researches different communication styles and understands more, and researches cultural information. In skills, the teacher notices that some students are hesitant to speak in class and create structured discussions where students can write their thoughts before speaking. So remember, skills was listening, observing, and so on. And you can see in that one that the teacher has observed, and then they've created a way that students, rather than being asked to speak in the class, can actually write their thoughts down before being asked to speak. Attitudes. So the teachers beginning to change their attitudes here, and they're recognizing the value of diverse perspectives and encouraging students to share stories of their different cultural backgrounds. You might see a link between that and the developmental one I talked about earlier, which is a very similar point there. Internal outcomes, the outcomes for the teacher as they develop a new personal perspective. They're beginning to understand, or they understand, the cultural differences are an opportunity for deeper learning for themselves, and also for their students, to help their students learn more about each other, about the world, and so on. And then the external outcome is the classroom becomes a more effective and inclusive learning environment. And when a classroom is more effective and more inclusive, the students tend to feel safer and tend to do better anyway. It allows students from different backgrounds to feel more valued, more understood, and more empowered, and it will help them learn in ways that will suit them best. So that is Diadoff. So I'm going to stop this recording and I will do a separate recording of the final one.